Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom. Now, if you remember the movie Finding Forrester, The Matrix, and everything else, there's something very important when it comes to not only literature, but to understand what is metaphorically being stated within certain realms of, well, not just architecture like a video game, but within the stories that, well, a creative one writes. So when it comes to things like the movie The Matrix, right? What shocked Neo in the last movie of The Matrix, right? What shocked him? Well, they were able to grow real food, right? It wasn't just out in the digital world, so on and so forth. They weren't eating oatmeal and slop and all that. They were able to grow real food and fight back against the machines more effectively. Now, that's just a metaphor, but then again, there was always a pushback because, as somebody liked to state one time, it takes a village to keep another village in check, but it takes also a village to raise a child, does it not? So, let's think about this. If you were to look at things like, oh, what do children state? Oh, that's so meta, she's got a GAT, which is G-Y-A-T-T, and you don't need AT&T to tell you what that means, right? It means she has a nice booty. That's exactly what they're referring to. However, a GAT somewhere else could refer to something else. So you have to pay attention so that you understand what people are saying, because everybody has their own form of communication, speech, yada, yada, yada. Now, people normally give themselves away all the time because they're speaking in one context, right? Now, they always say, oh, you should read in between the lines. Well, that's why you have paper like this with lines on it, and then you could write something down, whatever, blah, 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 right? But then again, Meta also spells what? Because it owns two companies, right? Facebook and Instagram. And if you ever seen White Collar, there was a part where Peter Burke, it was like in the very first episode where he's like, spell this on your phone. And what does it spell? FBI. Isn't that weird? So, if you don't read the terms of service that go along with the contract when you sign up for the application, then you don't understand yet, right? Now, I could get into cavity searches and everything else, but that's something completely different. So, let's ask, why read when you can also play? See, not only in the medical field, but in psychology and science specifically, there's something called game theory, right? Now, game theory is one aspect of studying, but when it comes to law enforcement, they also utilize this within interrogations and negotiation, right? You know, prisoner's dilemma, all this other stuff, right? But then, of course, you can also gamify learning, right? It's called gamification, right? So if you play a video game, so on and so forth, etc., you will also learn something because it represents something in the world in which you are walking in right now, right? Now, if you live in North Carolina, right, but you're from somewhere else, and then you get upset because of what people state, their logos or whatever, let me ask you this. Would the Tar Heels, who have a similar logo or symbol like Fordham University, be upset about Fordham University having the same logo or the same name? Because it spells F-U, Fordham University, right? Or like Fool Us. And then, of course, Tar Heels, your heel strikes tar when you walk on the street, if that's not what it's called. So, I mean, think about it, right? Then people want to say, oh, look at the rat. Well, tar, jumbled up, can also spell rat. It can also spell art, right? Why do you think we have to put lines on the floor in order for people to know how to park and drive on the highways and street and not kill each other, right? Because you have a license to drive, but if you get dumb and you have, well, expendable funds, so on and so forth, currency, i.e. whatever, well, or you have a hookup, right? You could crash that car into somebody else, end their life, and then just go grab another, right? So people should be conscious of a lot of things, because there's people that want to instigate and start stuff, and then when stuff happens, they ask why. But they never look backwards or the consequences or the actions of everybody so that everybody can keep each other in check, because if that doesn't happen, well, then there's going to be a wreck. So let's continue with these analogies and metaphors. Now, when it comes to Finding Freedom, this was an homage to Fast and the Furious and Final Fantasy and a lot of other things, right? But then again, did Squaresoft ever get a lawsuit? No. Did Final Fantasy ever get a lawsuit? No. Did people have a problem with the video game? No. Did people have a problem with the movie? No. Do people have a problem when they meet each other in person? Why is that? Why is that? You know, if somebody walks in and says, "Hey, hun, is that a honey pot? Or is that honey dipped?" I don't know, but when I dip, you dip, we dip, right? So what's wrong, right? What's wrong is letting somebody intentionally, knowingly do something that might put them 6 feet. And that's why in the Marine Corps, we say, "Get back, give me 6 feet." How far do you bury a person in a cemetery? I went up to Raleigh and there was a freaking tombstone that said Riddick on it. Now, you've seen Pitch Black. What did Riddick fight? And then, of course, in the other movie, what did they use him to go after? Because nobody else wanted to stand up, or maybe they couldn't. But yet, he was the one always in trouble, in exile. Why is that? You ever ask those questions? You ever ask people why they do what they do? You know what would be a great idea is if people either change their mind or we put someone younger in office than Donald Trump, like AOC, right? Hey, I see AOC up there. She's a good president. And I heard if she gets upset, everybody gets upset for some reason, just because of the words that she's saying. That would be weird, right? How did she get into her position? I don't know. But it would be interesting if she not only ran for president, she would also be a female president, which I think would be the first, since England already had a queen. I mean, why not the United States have a female president? She's also a minority, which will be an interesting factor. And I'm sure she knows all the gentlemen, not only within Congress, but that are politicians, senators, and governors and mayors, so on and so forth. Now, they always say you should check yourself before you wreck yourself, but if you have a governor in your vehicle, that's so you don't blow your engine, just like a state does, right? So, be nice to one another. It's fucking Christmas, for crying out loud. And if you don't believe in that, try real hard. I know it hurts, so be nice, right? Don't de-nice, right? If you know what that means. Don't try to play catch up with words and say it out loud or ask questions, because sometimes you don't even want to know the answer. So, enjoy this holiday. Enjoy the festive spirit. Remember, the prisons and the presents are two different things. Nobody wants to go to prison, and everybody wants to receive presents. Sometimes they don't like the presents that they receive. Why is that? This has been another episode and lesson within Finding Freedom. Have a good one. Peace.